Alright, welcome back to the Wintry Wyvern. We're going to continue our coverage of Fizban's Treasury of Dragons with the Draconic feats. These are 3 feats gifted to you by specific dragons, Chromatic, Gem, and Metallic. Supposedly gifts that are to encompass the missing subclasses that people were asking for in terms of things that aren't the Monk, the Sorcerer, and the Ranger. They were asking about, can we have a Draconic Warlock, or a Draconic Fighter, or a Draconic Wizard? Supposedly these are supposed to fill that gap to make sure every class has the option to play some sort of Draconic flavor in their campaign should they desire to. So we're going to jump right in, but I want to explain the key first and foremost. I've already highlighted most of this article. The key to understand these highlights is that from worst to best, muddy means brown means muddy, which is requires revision or clarification. Red is broken, not intended to work as it's written, or too strong for a campaign. Yellow is expected, things that we've seen more than enough times. Excellent are features that are reasons to take this feat in the first place. Blue is build defining, something that defines what kind of characters are taking this feature, and purple are things I just find interesting. So let's dive right into it. If you look at the screen right now, you'll see that there are 3 features in its entirety. Let me start first and foremost with the description, and then we'll lead into the Chromatic Dragon. A feat represents a character achieving mastery in one of their capabilities or discovering the ability to do something new. When this mastery arises from a draconic source, whether it's the gift of a dragon, the manifestation of some sort of draconic heritage, the blessing of a draconic god, or a consequence of slaying a dragon, it can have supernatural effects. Here are feats that bestow a draconic power available to you if you use the optional feat rule in Player's Handbook. So there is a section in the book called Draconic Gifts, which is something else entirely, something granted to you by a dragon that you can't take as a replacement for an ASI. These specifically, if you want to take them at level 4, 8, 12, or you're a variant human, you can start with these. These are options you can pick up without any sort of dragon intervention. So let's talk Gift of the Chromatic Dragon. You've manifested some of the power of chromatic dragons, granting you the following benefits. There's 2 parts to this, all of them have 2 parts, so we'll describe them one at a time. Chromatic Infusion. As a bonus action, you can touch a simple or martial weapon and infuse it with one of the following damage types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison. For the next minute, the weapon deals an extra 1d4 damage of the chosen type when it hits. After you used a bonus action, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Obviously, the 5 damage types describe the 5 chromatic dragons and the 5 damage types of Tiamat, the highest chromatic dragon. So when we look at Chromatic Infusion, first and foremost, who's taking this? We can look at the blue text. Simple or martial weapon implies that you're going to be some sort of frontliner, some sort of fighter, or some sort of ranger, someone who attacks with a bow or a crossbow from a distance. So elemental damage on your weapon as a bonus action sounds pretty good. It reminds me of Hex or Hunter's Mark. The real benefit to this would probably be that it doesn't spend a spell slot, but we're looking at the second half of this. It deals an extra 1d4 damage of the chosen type when it hits. So this does less damage than Hex, less damage than Hunter's Mark, and you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. So this is a once per 8 hours ability. Once per day, essentially. And it lasts for, let's see, how long does it last for? It lasts for a minute. So you're taking an entire feat for the benefit of around 2.5 damage per attack for a minute once per day. That on its own isn't that amazing. An ability like this has been playtested for years and years. If anybody's played the homebrew class Blood Hunter, you would know what this feels like. Just at level 1 or recently level 2, you can enchant one of your weapons with 1d4 damage elemental type, and you have that on you for the rest of your day as long as you're holding onto your weapon. There's no time limit, there's no number of uses. It does cost health, but very minor. And it scales as you level. This does none of that. It stays at 1d4 damage the entire time. You can only use it for 1 minute, and of course, once per day. So you have to consider, you're taking this feature in replacement of an ASI probably. So if you take it to your main damage type, it will be +1 damage, +1 attack roll if you add +2 to your main attacking stat. So is it worth trading off +1 damage and +1 attack roll for an extra 2.5 damage per minute per long rest? Probably not. This feature on its own isn't good enough to replace the ability score increase, and we'll go on to the next feature to describe that, and I'll give my overall thoughts on it. Reactive resistance is the second half. When you take acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage, you can use a reaction to give yourself resistance to that instance of damage. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. This isn't bad. you know, this is Absorb Elements, the first level spell, without the resulting damage afterwards. Being able to do this number of times per proficiency bonus per long rest will probably cut down a good amount of damage, depending on the campaign you're in. If you're playing like Rime of the Frost Maiden and you're in a lot of cold places, if you're going through Avernus, fire resistance, maybe even poison resistance would be good there. This is not a bad feature. It does have a number of uses, it does have a number of limitations, and further defines that this is probably not a feature that spellcasters would want to take, because most spellcasters have access to Absorb Elements. So this is very clearly a martial themed ability. Looking at it overall, is this worth taking over just +2 ASI? Only if your character aesthetic wants it. This feels like something that you would take, and I would honestly recommend for a shorter campaign, so something going from levels 1 to 5, or 5 to 9. The damage, 1d4 extra damage on your attacks, really falls off past a certain tier, past level 10 I'd imagine. 1d4 damage really doesn't change the landscape of a fight. That's maybe 25 to 50 damage over the course of 10 rounds, if a combat even lasts that long. I can see the flavor appeal to it. I think that if you want your weapon to be elemental through very high points of your campaign, through very tense points of your campaign, I think that would be a really cool aesthetic, and I'm sure it will mold into a lot of different identities, which I think is good. On a flavor aspect, really strong. On a mechanical aspect, not so much. Food for thought. Let's go on to Gift of the Gem Dragon. You've manifested some of the power of gem dragons, granting you following benefits. Ability score increase your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma score by 1 to a maximum of 20. Of course, standard. And telekinetic reprisal. When you take damage from a creature that is within 10 feet of you, you can use your reaction to emanate telekinetic energy. The creature that has dealt damage to you must make a strength saving throw equal to 8 plus PB plus the ability score increased. On a fail save, the creature takes 2d8 force damage and is pushed up to 10 feet away from you. On a successful save, they take half damage and aren't pushed. A reaction a number of times equal to your PB per long rest. So, this feature is the only one of the 3 that gives an ASI. Usually that implies that the second ability is not very powerful. It will be worth about half of a feature. We don't talk about Elven Accuracy in this house. That is a total outlier. So let's look at Telekinetic Reprisal. It is a 10-foot push. It is a saving throw, and it triggers when a creature is within 10 feet of you. So, here's the situation. You have a creature in your face, within 10 feet, within melee range. It takes a swing at you. As a reaction, you force a strength saving throw, and if they fail, they're pushed 10 feet away and take about 9 to 10 damage. So, with that, what did you really accomplish? Did you reduce the damage? No. Did you raise your armor class? No. Did you get rid of the threat? Not really. If they're within 10 feet of you, the odds of them not having 10 more feet to move back towards you is very, very, very low. They have to basically have no movement or 5 feet movement left by the time they're within melee range of you. Is that likely? Not really. Honestly, not really. So it confuses me what this feat is trying to accomplish, because it doesn't really set up opportunities to escape a dangerous situation. It's easily compared to the telekinetic feat, surprisingly like right in its name right here, telekinetic reprisal. The telekinetic feat is the same thing. It takes a half feat that allows you to take Int, Wiz, or Ka, and as a bonus action you can move a creature 5 feet away from you. They have to roll a saving throw, of course, but even if they fail, you can just try again. The telekinetic feature has no limitations. It has no number of uses. You can use it as many times as you want. You can even use it on allies. I just feel like that accomplishes this 10 times better. You know, there's the bonus action cost versus a reaction cost, but you kind of want to save your reactions for better things like shield or absorb elements or even counterspell if you're a caster. As a bonus action, you could use that, and if it doesn't work, you know what, try again next turn. It's fine. There's no limit to the number of uses. I don't feel like this feat accomplishes what it's trying to do, and with that, I don't see a situation when you would ever take this. Of course, if this is a gift given to you by a dragon, you know, why not? Have it. That's cool. But otherwise, it's basically Hellish Rebuke with a push, and I don't think that's good enough for a feat slot. Sorry if that comes off a bit harsh, but that's the bottom line. Let's look at the last feat, Gift of the Metallic Dragon. You've manifested some of the power of metallic dragons, granting you the following benefits. Draconic Healing. You learn a Cure Wound spell. You can cast a spell without expending a spell slot, and once you do, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest, but you can also cast a spell using spell slots you have. spellcasting ability is Intelligence, Wisdom, or Charisma. When you cast this feat, choose when you gain this feat. Alright, so looking at that first half, we want to look at the Cure Wounds spell and ask ourselves, what kind of character wants this feature? So, the majority of the casters are already crossed off the list. So we're looking at Druid, Bard, Ranger, Paladin, Artificer. I'm sure I'm forgetting one. But all of those casters already have a healing spell. They already have Cure Wounds, or they have Healing Word, which is as good, if not better, than Cure Wounds. So they don't want this feature. So let's look at the second set, the Marshals, you know, Barbarian, Fighter, Monk. Do they want this feature? Well, not really. They don't have spell slots to spend, so what they can better take is the Healer feat. The Healer feat is usually a bigger amount of HP to your entire party every short rest, you know, as an action per person, and just like Cure Wounds is. It doesn't cost spell slots, and a healing kit is what, like 10 gold? The Healer feat for Marshals is much better than what this is offering, so who wants this feature? It's limited to just about 3 classes. It's the Wizard. The Wizard notoriously has no healing spells. It's like their one weakness, except for like life transference, but you know, that's a little bit finicky. So they have plenty of spell slots. They can certainly make use of a Cure Wounds spell, cast it up higher. And let's see, who else? The Sorcerer. Sorcerer can make great use of Cure Wounds. If they're not a Divine Soul Sorcerer, they don't have access to Cure Wounds, and they have sorcery points they can spend to cast Cure Wounds. Pretty great spell for them. And the Tertiary class that could take this, probably the Warlock. The Warlock doesn't really have the spell slots to manage Cure Wounds, but from someone who's played a good amount of Celestial Warlock, Cure Wounds is still a really good spell for post-combat cleanup. If you want to use your remaining spell slots to heal someone for a big amount, like a 4th and 5th level Cure Wounds, it's pretty great, and you can get the spell slot back on a short rest. You can probably make good use of that. So three classes, Wizard, Sorcerer, and Warlock. If I'm missing one, feel free to describe it in the comments. They have the spell slots to fulfill a use for this ability, and have a lack in their spell lists. So let's go on to the next feature, because I feel like this is secondary to Draconic Healing. Protective Wings. You can manifest Protective Wings that can shield you or others. When you or another creature you can see within 5 feet of you is hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to manifest Spectral Wings from your back for a moment. You grant this bonus to the target's AC equal to your PB, your proficiency bonus, against that attack roll, potentially causing it to miss. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So, just like reactive resistance over here, there seems to be an active half of the feature and a reactive half of the feature. This is more, the one over here, reactive resistance, is more similar to absorb elements. Protective Wings is more similar to shield. Of course, shield lasts until the start of your next turn. This only lasts against one attack roll, so it is by default worse, of course, and it doesn't beat shield until level 17 when your proficiency bonus is +6. The benefits of this, of course, is that you can cast it on somebody else. You can cast it on someone within 5 feet of you. I do have issues with this specifically because when you are a long-range caster like a wizard or a sorcerer or a warlock, you don't usually want to be next to somebody in general. Unless it's like a paladin, probably a great pairing with a paladin, but if you are a squishy caster, you don't want to group up because you are a prime target for something like Fireball or Lightning Bolt. You kind of want to keep your distance. Being within 5 feet puts you both at risk for more destructive AoEs. The second benefit, of course, is that this doesn't cost a spell slot. You can cast this without spending any spells, so you can save those first level spells for things like magic missiles or absorb elements and things like that. It's a neat bonus, and because you can cast it on a friend, that makes it so that you can stack on top of shield. So if they cast shield and you cast this on top of it, pretty big bump to AC. I can see a good amount of Blade Singers probably using this. Blade Singers might appreciate not only the defensive capabilities of being able to stand in the front line with somebody else without spending the shield spell, and of course using Cure Wounds if one of your frontline friends takes a good amount of damage. Of the three, Gift of the Metallic Dragon is probably the best. It is very specific to a certain amount of casters, like a good 3/4 of the cast do not really want this feature, but that's how most features work. Gift of the Chromatic Dragon, of course, as an example, is only good for martial classes, and Gift of the Gem Dragon is good for nobody. So of the three, this is definitely one of the more flexible ones. In retrospect, if we look at all of these as a whole, they're not super powerful. They're not going to change the landscape of D&D. They're not going to be busted, and your DM's probably not going to ban them. There's nothing problematic in their wordings. I think it's very solid, exactly what they want, exactly what they do, but not maybe what they intend to do, which is be protective. This does nothing of the sort. If we want to wrap this up very quickly, we can look at what's changed since the Unearthed Arcana. Left side is Fizbans, right side is the UA released earlier this year. As a quick key, green means it has changed from the UA, something entirely new is added. Red means something was removed from the UA, and yellow is inconsequential, mostly flavorly word changes that has no impact on its effect. So, just in the description, it's mostly nitpicky literary choices. There's a wording here, gift of a true dragon. Maybe they've chosen not to define what a true dragon means, so they've omitted it from the official version of Draconic Feats, and the rest is just, you know, nitpicky literary stuff. No problem. Gift of the Chromatic Dragon, nothing has changed. Exactly the same as the UA, I guess there wasn't enough feedback on this, but they've added new names, Chromatic Confusion and Reactive Resistance. They've added that to all of the features, mostly probably to clarify with the DM which part of the feature you're using when you say you're using the feature. Gift the Gem Dragon actually got a buff from the UA. Originally, the UA did nothing if the creature succeeded on the save, but now if they succeed, they'll only take half of the damage, so half of 9 damage, they'll take 4 damage, you know. They won't be pushed, but, you know, 4 damage is better than no damage. And then, of course, Gift of the Metallic Dragon. Big change, probably the biggest of the 3, is that the bonus to the AC used to be a 4-sided die, and you add that to their AC. Now it's exactly your proficiency bonus, a much more reliable number when you know exactly how much you're giving them. This feature used to be wasted if you would try to protect an attack, roll a 1 and it wouldn't be enough. Probably felt really bad, so this, at least you know how much you're giving them, and you won't be disappointed in how much they get. So, overall, these feats are okay. These feats are okay. I mean, I think my biggest hang up on these is that if I remove the titles from the features, you know, if they weren't called Gifts of the Blank Dragon, I wouldn't really know that they're dragon feats. You know, this looks like Elemental Martial Adept, this looks like a bad version of Telekinetic, and this looks like, you know, Paladin. Paladin the feat. You know, Cure Wounds and Protective. This is like level 1 Paladin. You get Cure Wounds or Lay on Hands or whatever, and you get Protective Wings, which is basically like the Interception or the Protection feature. So I feel like it's kind of missing on the Draconic flavor, and I feel like maybe Draconic Gifts. I haven't read that section yet, so maybe that fulfills what I'm looking for better. But overall, if these were gifts to you, given to you by a wonderful, benevolent dragon, take them. They're great. You know what? Pick them up. Why not have them? If you want to take this instead of an ASI or instead of another feat, really consider what you're trying to accomplish with your build and see if it fills that niche. If not, don't take it. If it does, if you feel like this is exactly what your character is looking for, mechanically or aesthetically, entirely your choice. I don't have much else to say. I think the next thing I'm going to cover are either the spells or one of the subclasses. Still looking forward to this book. I think there's a lot to glean from it. But otherwise, hope you guys have a great day, a great weekend, and stay frosty.